About 1 minute, please.
Good evening and welcome to our 19th Congressional District Primary Candidates Night, co-sponsored by your two local leagues of women voters, the League of Women Voters of the Cooperstown area and the Oneonta League of Women Voters. Tonight's program will feature candidates for both the Democrat and Republican primary races for New York's 19th Congressional District. We have an audience wider than this room, so we'd like to welcome as well our citizens listening and watching at home. I'm Maureen Murray, President of the League of Women Voters of the Cooperstown area, and I'll be the MC for the Phase 1 for this evening. We'd like to thank the Foothills Performing Arts Center for providing this terrific venue here in downtown Oneonta as a public service. Thanks also to Dave Giese and SUNY Oneonta's Office of Communications for his and their generous contribution of time and technical resources that will allow tonight's program to be viewed online. We'll be presenting two separate debates this evening. Each of these segments will last no longer than an hour and 15 minutes. Based on a coin toss, the Republican candidates will go first. John Faso and Andrew Heaney. We will have a short break, and then we will hear from the Democratic candidates, Zephyr Teachout and Will Yandig. Each of these candidates are vying to represent their party in the election this fall as our U.S. congressional representative for the 19th District, which includes all of Otsego, Delaware, Schoharie, Columbia, Greene, Sullivan, and Ulster counties, as well as parts of Broome, Dutchess, Montgomery, and Rensselaer counties. This office is currently held by Representative Chris Gibson of Kinderhook, who is not seeking re-election. Primary election day is Tuesday, June 28th. The polls will be open from noon to 9 p.m. Members of the League of Women Voters of the Oneonta area and the League of Women Voters of the Cooperstown area have arranged tonight's program so that primary voters may get to know our prospective congressional candidates in an unbiased setting. The League is a nonpartisan political organization. This term often confuses people. Nonpartisan means we do not support or oppose political parties or candidates. But we are political in that we believe democracy is not a spectator sport and that all citizens need to educate themselves and participate in our democracy. When not engaged in organizing and hosting candidates' nights like this, we League members study issues and policies, come to member agreement on those issues, and then lobby based on those decisions. The League was founded in 1920 when the 19th Amendment was ratified. We have retained the name League of Women Voters because of those suffragette roots. But for well over 50 years, men have been included in our membership. Our local leagues were founded in the early 1970s and over the years have had an impact on issues ranging from recycling, voting machine selection, and local government organization. Please consider joining us, and we make that easy for you. On the table outside this room during intermission, please feel free to pick up a form that would generate your membership in the Oneonta League or the Cooperstown League. Also available is voter services information. Specifically, if anyone is here and not registered to vote, we want to make that easy. So we have voter registration forms, also material on the specific dates that are important for voting in the next several elections through the general election. Out of courtesy for our candidates and our audience, we ask that all cell phones be turned off or to vibrate. Recording any portion of this event by video or cell phone is not permitted. We welcome questions from the audience, but they must be written down and submitted to an usher for the moderators to present to the candidates. Please withhold your applause during the question and answer segments. Barbara Heaney of the Oneonta League will be moderating the debate between our Republican candidates, and Cooperstown League member Stephanie Bauer will moderate the session for the Democrats. We have several other league members volunteering here tonight. Timekeepers, David Hutchison and Leanne Harabayashi will be acting as timekeepers for the 7 o'clock session, and several of our other members have been ushers and have done a lot of background work to make this event happen. For the 8:30 debate, David will stay as timekeeper and Karen Streck will take over as another timekeeper. I'd like to introduce our media panel, who also will be posing questions for the candidates. We have Emily Popek, assistant editor of the Daily Star. Nice to have you, Emily. And Jim Kevlin, editor of Hometown Oneonta and the Freeman's Journal. Welcome to you both, and thanks for your participation. And now, I'd like to turn the program over to Barbara Heaney for the Republican Candidate Forum.
Thank you, Maureen. Now, I'd like to now, at last, welcome our Republican congressional candidates. To my far left is John Faso, and to my immediate left, Andrew Heaney. Thank you both for agreeing to participate tonight and give the voters an opportunity to get to know you. So on to the program. This is going to be a forum for candidates to answer questions on a wide range of issues, we hope. We've asked that all the candidates please discuss their own opinions and positions, refrain from discussing other candidates. Our intent is to focus on the issues, not personalities, and to present constructive information that will allow voters to make some informed decisions. So I'd like to thank all the candidates in advance for agreeing to this and adhering to this. Format will be as follows. Each candidate will have up to 3 minutes to make his opening statement. After the opening statements, the candidates will answer questions on several topics. I will alternate asking the questions with members of the media panel posing the questions. I will be asking questions that have been submitted by you, the audience members. If you think of a question during the program, please raise your hand, try to get the attention of one of the ushers who have the cards, and they will collect your written question. Thank you. Following that Q&A period, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. So if you would like to have the candidates address a question, I just wanted to remind everyone actually submitting questions, please direct your question towards policy issues, not personal issues. Phrase the question so that it can be answered by both candidates, as all candidates will be asked to answer each question. And just be aware that our league volunteers will be reviewing the questions, and we may be consolidating multiple questions if there are multiple questions on the same topic, so that we can cover as much ground as we can. Candidates get up to 2 minutes to respond to each question, and then the timers will signal them when they need a reminder of the time limit. And we may have follow-ups, 1-minute follow-ups in addition to the initial answers. So now we'll turn our attention to the candidates for a congressional representative from New York State's District 19. Thank you again for appearing. And we did a coin flip to determine who would go first. And Mr. Heaney will be first with the introductory statement.
Thanks, Barbara. There we go. Barbara, thank you so much. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. I think this is an excellent showing. This is my first political race, and so this is actually my first debate. So I am very honored and pleased to be here. So thank you for having me, and thank you for hosting me. My name is Andrew Heaney. I do not come from politics. I come from small business. I come from a small business family. My dad ran a small heating oil company that I grew up in and I worked in my whole life. And when I was 22 years old, sadly, my father passed away from lung cancer. And I was forced to take over a division of that business that was very deeply in debt. And I over the course of 20 years, grew that business into the largest company of its kind in the country and created dozens of New York jobs in the process, and it's something I'm very, very proud of. I'm married to my wife, Leslie, for 16 years. She's out in the audience here. And we have 3 young children who are 10, 6, and 4. We live in Dutchess County in the town of Millbrook. And in Millbrook, I am a coach. I am a t-ball coach. I'm a soccer coach, and I am a volunteer firefighter. And we live a very blessed life there. And the reason that I'm running is because of my children and my children's generation, because I believe that they have been betrayed. I believe that all of us actually have been betrayed by a political system that I believe is now fundamentally corrupt and has been corrupted by a series of factors, including professional politicians, lobbyists, special interests that control those politicians. And I believe that those interests have conspired to cause a crisis of faith in this country, the likes of which I have never seen in my lifetime. I can't tell you the number of times I've been to a door, I've been on the phone, I've talked to someone, and had them tell me that if they were my age, when they look at my family, if they were my age, they wouldn't have children again in America. That's how bad people feel about the future of this country. And I believe we need for reform, fundamental reform, term limits, make it illegal to lobby after serving in Congress. We need to take away the special benefits that Congress offers itself, a special health care plan, a special medical plan, a special pension plan. And we need people who are not going to take special interest money. And I will do all of those things. I will term limit myself. I will not take special interest money. I will not take the medical plan. I will not take the pension plan. And my goal as a congressman, if I do one thing, will be to work to restore the faith of the people of the 19th District in the system that represents them. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to remind you to just make eye contact between the timer and the candidate beforehand. So we know who's timing who. Okay, Dave, your timing, Mr. President? Yeah. Yeah, okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Okay, Mr. Faso, you are next.
Barbara, thank you very much, and thank the League for sponsoring this debate, this forum tonight. Thank all of you for coming out tonight, and those at home who are watching the live streaming, and thank you to my opponent for participating as well. I'm running for Congress for one basic reason. America is in crisis, and upstate New York is in deep, deep crisis. There's tremendous economic distress across our country. We see stagnant wages, we see low job growth, we see people beating themselves to the door to get the heck out of New York State. We've lost 1 million people in New York State in the last 10 years alone. Every single county that Barbara had mentioned in the 19th Congressional District in the last 5 years has lost population. Why is that? It's because taxes are too high, there are no jobs, seniors are being priced out of their homes, and young people, when they come out of school or out of the military service, don't see a future here because there aren't the job opportunities. So what do we do to restore economic growth in our country? This is the paramount issue that we face as a nation. How do we get more growth? Because that's the key to solving our deficit problems. That's the key to solving the problem of the national debt. So I've set forth a specific plan to deal with tax reform, deal with small business incentives so that small businesses, which create 70% of the jobs, are incentivized to create jobs, and also to deal with the regulatory madness that's coming from Albany and Washington that is killing the opportunities in our state. And every single day I talk to small business people who tell me this story. It's really true. Now, I have my experience. I served in the state legislature. I was instrumental in the architect of closing a $5 billion state deficit without raising taxes. I was instrumental in things like passing the STAR program, which has benefited seniors and homeowners with school property taxes. And I was also instrumental in ending parole for violent felons. Mary Frances and I, who's also here tonight, made our American dream at Kinderhook. We still live in the same house we bought 33 years ago. We raised our family there, but the American dream is slipping and fading for many, many people. So the question is, how do we restore opportunity? How do we restore hope? We have to get the economy growing. That is the fundamental question for us. That's the fundamental issue before the Congress. And if I am so honored by the people of this district to represent them, that is the issue that I will focus job one on, getting economic growth and prosperity back to upstate New York and indeed across America. Thank you so much for attending here tonight, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, thank you. And now we are ready for the question and answer session. We are going to take our first question from the media panel. Emily Popek from the Star, you get the first question, and based on our coin toss, the first question will be answered first by Mr. Faso.
Both of you spoke about the crisis that our nation and our area is in. Can you tell us what didn't Chris Gibson do to right those wrongs, and what would you do to right those wrongs in Congress?
Well, I wouldn't answer the question the way you posed it. I think Chris has done an absolutely terrific job. He has worked across the aisle in a bipartisan way on many issues, whether it's Lyme disease, whether it's on issues of trying to help veterans. So I think Chris is, in fact, I was someone back in 2010 that was one of the people behind Chris Gibson running. I encouraged him to run. We only live a block away from each other in Kinderhook, so I hope no one in Oneonta holds that against me. But the fact is that I see the future as a critical path for our country as to which direction we go in. Right now, our national debt is $19 trillion. Now that's pretty hard to get your arms around, but that's $60,000 for every man, woman, and child in America. That's $125,000 for every taxpayer in America. So we are leaving to our children and our grandchildren a less prosperous future. We would be the first generation in our country's history to leave the next generation worse off than what we found it. And so, to me, this is the key. We are growing now at very anemic. This is the slowest growth in post-World War II history in our country. It's only about 1.2% this year GDP growth. So you have to fix the tax code to create incentives for people to invest, eliminate the corporate welfare and disincentives that exist in our tax code today, and change the regulatory system. The Obama administration, and heaven knows the Cuomo administration in Albany, are literally crushing small business and dairy farmers and agriculture in this district. So I hear every single day from small business people who tell me their tale of woe and what is going on, what is coming at them from Washington and Albany, and that's how we change it, and that's how we get growth.
Yeah, I would just say that, to me, Chris Gibson is in many ways the ideal. When I talk about restoring people's faith in the system, Chris Gibson is someone who term limited himself. I will do the same thing. Chris Gibson did not come into politics from a political background. He came from a military background. He came from outside of politics. I will do the same thing. And Chris has done incredible work in terms of Lyme disease, in terms of our veterans. I think he's been a great congressman. But the one thing that is a big difference between me and Chris is our background. I am a small business owner. I've run a business for over 20 years. I've created businesses. I've made a payroll. I understand what it takes to run a company, and I understand what it means to deal with the government. And I know that in the 19th district, 70% of the jobs in this district come from small business. So, and by the way, we are living through one of the most hostile environments for small businesses that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And so this is not rocket science. If we want to make life better in the 19th district, we need to make life better for small businesses. We need tax reform. We need regulatory reform. Obamacare has been an absolute catastrophe for several small businesses. I can tell you story after story. I was just out at a construction company. The person who owned the company told me that he had 49 employees, that he would never hire anybody ever again. And the reason was Obamacare. So we've got to fix that. We've got to fix that. And the other thing that I promised to do that Chris Gibson didn't focus on, but I will, I come from, like I said, small business, and I come from a sales background. And to do business in this district, you almost have to make a non-economic decision. And so I would interpret the role of congressman to be the economic booster for this district. I will go door to door on behalf of this district and ask people to come and bring their businesses, their jobs, and their investment right here to the 19th district.
Thank you. Mr. Faso, would you like a minute for follow-up on that?
Well, sure, thank you. I do think that, give you an example. I spoke to a guy, excuse me, a guy who owns a lumber business in Ulster County the other day, and I said, how are you doing? He said, well, things are going very well, except I don't really like what I have to do. Because all of many of the sawmills that he deals with have been put out of business by onerous regulation, he's now shipping most of his logs to China. And he said, I hate to do it, but that's the reality of how I have to operate. I spoke to people who have a trucking firm today who told me about the incredible burdens that they have to deal with in terms of dealing with conflicting and contrary regulatory guidance from the Department of Transportation in Washington, from the Department of Motor Vehicles in Albany, and how difficult it is for them to keep their trucks on the road and to comply with the regulations. So this is an ongoing, continuing, burdensome problem that we have to address.
Well, oh, sure. I didn't realize I got another minute. That's excellent.
Follow-up.
Sure. I mean, look, I not only have I met with hundreds of small businesses, I've been a small business in this district. And I'll add one more thing to that, which is that one of the biggest problems we have in this district, it's a people problem. It's hard, ironically, as you drive through the district and you see economic stagnation and the devastation that afflicts us, what we also have is an employee problem. So even if you wanted to bring in additional business or bring in an additional factory, very often the human infrastructure of our area has been compromised as well. And so I really believe we need to rebuild from the ground up. What this district needs is it needs the entrepreneurial spirit, it needs small business owners, it needs that creativity to attract people back to the 19th district, to start those businesses and to work with those businesses as well.
All right, let's shift to another topic. Social programs, benefits, including Medicare, these all require adequate revenues. What is your tax policy for revenue? And Mr. Heaney, you get 2 minutes to answer that first.
Sure. So we have a federal budget that is roughly $4 trillion, it's about $3.9 trillion. We collect about $3.4 trillion out of that 3.9. So we are running right now a $500 billion deficit, structural deficit. And that deficit, by the way, is projected to grow to $1 billion in a very short period of time, in a few years. So if you look at where we're spending the money, 70% of that 3.9 trillion is going to so-called non-discretionary services like Social Security, Medicare, et cetera. 30% right now, only 30% is discretionary. So 30% of 3.9 trillion, that's about 1.1 trillion, okay? And then if you think about the fact that defense is about 600 billion, that leaves you with 500 billion to spend on other programs, to spend on our government. That's 500 billion that you can spend out of the 3.9. By the way, that 500 billion is the same amount as our deficit. So we have a real problem here, because if you feel that defense, like I do, that defense is not discretionary, we need to find a way to generate more revenue. And that to me is real simple. We've got to cut, but we also have to grow. We are not going to cut our way out of this crisis. We have to grow our way out of this crisis too. Waste, fraud, duplication of services in government, and also if we can get our economy to a 3% GDP or a 3.5% GDP rate, which we can do by cutting the corporate tax rate and by easing regulations in this country will grow. This country will have perfectly adequate revenues to satisfy all our needs.
Now, the federal government doesn't have a revenue problem, it has a spending problem. And we, as our economy overall, has a growth problem. So the way to fix the growth problem is to have corporate tax reform, not to encourage our multinational companies to bring the 2.7 trillion of foreign earnings that they have, bring them back home without risking double taxation. That is a fundamental change that we need to do in order to make our tax code more competitive. Medicare that you mentioned, we need to enhance programs like Medicare Advantage, which have benefited many seniors and provide much more flexibility and discretion for seniors. And I think we have to work very hard to make sure that we secure the financing of Social Security for the future. Today, Social Security is estimated to only pay 77% of the projected benefits in 2034. A mere 18 years from now, they will not be able to pay what they really owe. And so we've got to fix that so the next generations have something to look forward to. I've also offered an innovative plan to finally eliminate Nelson Rockefeller's 50-year-old mistake. It's kind of the anniversary of the league here, allowing men into the league. The fact is that New York is one of the only states in the country that requires the counties to pay a significant portion of Medicaid out of the property tax. Do you know here in Otsego County, the whole entire county tax levy is $11 million. $10 million of it goes to pay Medicaid. This is outrageous, and it is not done in virtually any other state. So what we need to do is have a concerted effort to re-examine programs like Medicaid and fix Nelson Rockefeller's 50-year mistake. We can do that by amending federal law to eliminate the ability of a state to impose these burdens on the county property tax.
Okay. Would you like to follow up? You get another minute to follow up on the issue of taxes and revenue.
I would, yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier that one of the reasons I'm running is because of my children. And one of the things I'm most concerned about is $19 trillion debt. And right now, 6% of our budget goes to interest payments on that debt. And that is in a 0% interest rate environment. When that goes up to 1% or 2%, that is going to take up 12%, 18% of our budget. That is a catastrophe. So the debt is going to deal with us unless we deal with it. And I'll tell you that one of the reasons we can't seem to get any reform is that Washington is frozen. Washington is frozen because it is occupied by professional politicians. These people are focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is re-election. And the people that control them, the special interests that control them, are focused on financing those elections. And they do not want to deal with reform. And I'll tell you something, until we start getting citizen representation back into Washington, people who are going to stand up and fight for reform without fear of non-election, we are never going to resolve these serious problems.
Mr. Faso, would you like another minute follow-up?
Yeah, I would, just to amplify a little bit about the Medicaid proposal I've made. I went back and I read the federal law, and the federal law authorizes the states to impose a portion of the state share of Medicaid on the localities. Now, consider these two numbers, $9 billion and $7.5 billion. $9 billion is the amount that local governments pay for Medicaid in the entire United States of America. $7.5 billion is what the local governments in New York State pay out of that $9 billion. It gives you an idea of what a crazy mistake this was that Rockefeller imposed on us. And so it's time, even though it's 50 years old, it's time to fix it. And my plan, which has never before been offered, but is already getting some support in DC, would suggest change Medicaid law so that a state over a 5-year period can no longer impose this burden on the county property tax. This will specifically benefit us here in the 19th Congressional District.
Okay, thank you. And now we'd like to entertain another question, different topic perhaps, from the media panel.
Yes.
Do you have one?
Donald Trump is certainly going to be your party's, or almost certain to be your party's standard bearer this fall. Please give us your assessment of the candidate. Will you be seeking his support in the primary? Will you be seeking his support, asking him to campaign for you in the general election? And why?
Jim, thank you very much for the question. And I have said all along throughout this process that I will support the nominee of my party, and that is likely to be Mr. Trump, so I will support him. But the people can understand the difference between different offices. They're going to make a choice based upon who they want to be President of the United States, and they're going to make a choice who they want to be Member of Congress for this congressional district. So I'm running on the views and the values that I think best reflect the people of this district. So I want to see tax reform so we can get more jobs. I want to see regulatory changes so our kids and our grandchildren don't have to leave. And you know, we have this crazy policy in New York State. I call it the export of our affluent elderly. As soon as anyone retires and they have a few bucks, they want to leave because of New York's confiscatory tax burden and the property tax burden. I met a gentleman last night in Ulster County, living in a small condo development, townhouse condo development. I said, how's it going? He says, it's great, I love living here, but I pay $10,000 a year in taxes. And my wife and I have decided we're going to move to South Carolina. We've picked out the house, and we'll pay $900 a year in taxes. Now, there are some great advantages that we have over other parts of the country. I think we have a fine educational system, etc. And the upstate environment, I think, is tremendous. But the fact is that we are driving people away. So my campaign is going to be focused on the issues that I think are important to fixing the economy in this district. It's not going to be based upon who's running for president. It's going to be based upon how we can fix the economy in the 19th Congressional District. And I've got the experience and background and knowledge of this district because I've been here for 33 years. I just didn't parachute in from Brooklyn or some other place and decide I want to be a representative for this district. I've lived here, worked here. My wife is the school nurse at our local high school for the last 20 years. We're deeply imbued in this community, in this district, and that's why I'm best suited to represent it.
Mr. Heaney, 2 minutes to address this question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And, you know, I think that I really believe that Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders represent a real sense of frustration in this country right now. Deep anger that is everywhere. And when I knock on doors, when I come to people's doors and get on the phone with them and talk to them about the future, I mean, they tell me that they don't believe in the future anymore. They don't believe that their children have a future. They don't believe in the American dream anymore. And, you know, I think that sense of desperation, that sense of sadness has turned into anger. And I think that's what Donald Trump represents. And I identify with that. Donald Trump is an outsider in his party. I have been an outsider in this race. Donald Trump is a businessman. I have a business background as well, so I do identify with him in that regard. You know, but I think that the key issue here is this issue of reform. How do we get back? How do we regain people's confidence again in the system? And that's where I think that, you know, distinct from Donald Trump, it's very important for us to select a congressman who understands that challenge, who understands that that is really the central issue right now of our time. The economy is definitely important, so is education, so is national security. But if we don't restore people's faith in the future of this country, that is going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is the thing that we need to intervene on. So things like term limits, things like making it illegal to lobby after serving in Congress, dealing with the fact that Congress offers itself a special medical plan, a special pension plan that's better than anything that any of you can get on your own or your family can get. That is a corrosive of faith. And that is something that our representative here from the 19th District has got to deal with and has to deal with now.
Thank you. And next question from the audience. What will you do to help veterans across the country get services they need when they need it? And that goes first to Mr. Heaney.
Well, thank you for that question. And I want everyone, are there any veterans in the crowd tonight? Well, thank you for your service. And I want you to know that as a congressman, one of the things I've been talking about restoring faith, I think a core element of restoring the people's faith is doing right by our veterans. And I hope we all agree that right now we are not doing right by our veterans. When our boys and girls are coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan and they have traumatic brain injury or they have PTSD and they have to wait 7 months or 8 months for a service rating from the VA, When someone who's in crisis and is suicidal and has to wait 3 weeks to talk to a health representative at the VA, that is totally unacceptable to me. So one of the things that I would like to do, I will try to do if I'm lucky enough to be elected, is I will try to get on Veterans Affairs Committee. And I will spend a great deal of my time representing and advocating for my veterans. We've also released a 5-point veterans plan, a VA plan, a reform plan. And one of the most important elements of that is demanding that Congress, instead of getting a gold-plated medical plan, Congress put itself on the VA health plan. Congress already can get medical care from the VA. But I say, have them get all of their medical care from the VA. And in my mind, that means that the health care that they're going to receive, our veterans are going to receive, is going to improve very quickly. We need to be able to have the VA open on weekends. And we also need the VA to come to our veterans. Every single one of our communities throughout this district has an American Legion, has a VFW. Our veterans should not have to go to a government building, a remote government building. They should be able to go to places of honor, to places of community, and be able to access those services and those benefits there. The VA should come to our veterans.
Mr. Faso.
Thank you. It's a vitally important question, the care and the obligation that America has to its veterans. I've been sickened by some of the stories we've heard from around the country about veteran waiting lists and inadequate care and inadequate treatment. It's also true that we need much better mental health services for veterans as they come out of the service, much more peer counseling, and I've proposed a specific program funded out of existing VA resources to provide peer counseling to veterans all across this country. And you could do this through the county veteran service agencies and other nonprofit agencies that provide services to veterans. I also think that we should really enhance the ability of a veteran if they do not want to go to a VA facility and they prefer to go to a private practitioner. They should be given the opportunity to do that and not have arbitrary restrictions on their ability to do that. But I also think it's important that we not throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are many, many dedicated individuals, medical providers, and other people who work for the VA. And I think the negligence and the inadequacies of some should not overshadow the good work that is done. I don't think it's a good idea to put all members of Congress in the VA health system. I don't think that that necessarily is going to fix the problem. And I can just imagine Congressman X's staff saying, oh, Congressman has to go and get a medical appointment, and guess what's going to happen? They'll wind up getting pushed ahead of some veteran. The fact of the matter is the VA is meant for veterans and their families, and I think that we need to make sure that the VA is enhanced and that it's preserved, but that also we have competition so that if a veteran can get better services somewhere else, they're given the ability to do it without an arbitrary geographic limitation on that.
Okay. I actually want to hear a little follow-up on the veteran topic because someone in the audience raised the issue of homeless veterans. So I'm wondering if you could speak on how you recognize this issue and what would you do about it. And that'll go just for a minute. Can we try that? Mr. Heaney first.
Sure. I think that just wanted to say that I think the problems with the VA do come from the top. And just this past few weeks, Secretary McDonald made a comment that waiting lines, he compared waiting lines to the waiting lines at Disney World. And I think that I really do think that accountability is critical in the VA. They are funded to the tune of $87 billion a year. That should be an adequate budget for them to take care of our veterans. Now, on the topic of our homeless veterans, many of our veterans from previous wars, particularly from Vietnam, were not welcomed home here, suffered from the same things that our boys and girls are coming back from war zones with, and are dealing with those things and coping with those things through drugs, are having a very hard time, and also just aren't getting the care that they need. We need to find these veterans, we need to take care of them. was just talking to a dad the other day. He told me his son was a Navy veteran, and his son was homeless, and it's a real problem. It's something we need to deal with.
Mr. Faso, any more on that?
Upon discharge of our servicemen and women, I think we need to make sure that we have an accountable system whereby people can be screened and checked and directed to the services that they need. That is one of the problems. A lot of these veterans fall in between gaps, and we've got to address it right away. We should do that by incorporating existing social services networks along with traditional veteran social services networks in order to do this. But again, one of the reasons, there's no doubt, and we can address this later, but the heroin and prescription drug abuse that is rampant in our society today is also particularly afflicting many veterans, particularly those who may have had a service-connected disability. And so we've got to address that. And so I think this is all part of the fact that these issues are all part of the fact that we've got a stagnant economy. If we create more growth and opportunity and job opportunities, we'll have better opportunities for veterans coming out of the service.
I almost want to say, maybe we could go another round about veterans.
Yeah.
It seems like you both have more to say, so another minute.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to do that. Just building on something John said, the thing is, right now our veterans are screened. They are screened before they leave. It's part of the discharge process. The problem is especially now, our combat veterans are screened in the war zone. And so the way it's been explained to me by these young veterans is, when you're screened, you basically just tell the doctor everything's fine. Because first of all, you don't want to admit anything's wrong. And second of all, you want to go home. And so we've created this process where they get one screen and then they go home and they literally have a gun in their hand 1 minute and the next minute they're home with their wife and their kids. And one of the things that it's been suggested to me that I think is a great idea is I think we actually need to keep them in the combat zone for 15, 20, 30 days, let them decompress, let them be around other veterans before they return. Let them talk about what's happened to them in the combat zone, and let's keep screening them. Let's stay in touch with them and make sure they don't fall between the cracks.
Okay. Mr. Faso?
Well, I think there are many other things that we need to focus on. I've talked to veterans who run nonprofit agencies that seek to address employment. So I think we just need to have a better continuum of monitoring and counseling for those veterans that need it. And when those men and women come home, we make sure that they're not falling through the cracks. So we need a better incorporation of veterans into counseling services that they may need, but also involving their families more, because the families bear an incredible burden as well. And many of our veterans have had multiple deployments, and this has really wreaked havoc upon many families. It's a very, very difficult thing from a mental health perspective. So we've got to be sensitive to it, we need to be caring about it, and we need to make sure that veterans and their families are connected to the services that they need upon their discharge.
Okay. And another question from the media panel. From Emily.
Tell us what hope we should have locally for the revitalization of the local economy if you are elected to Congress.
Mr. Faso first.
So much of this is connected to policies, regulatory and tax, that come from Albany, that come from Washington. And I think, it's incorrect to look at the issue of local development simply from the standpoint of what does Washington do, or what does Albany do, or what do the localities do. One thing that we need to do here in New York State is we need to streamline the development review process. It's called SECRET, or the State Environmental Quality Review Act. That act is often used as a cudgel by opponents to thwart development, often by economic competitors. Look at the Bel Air Mountain project, 15 years through the review process. So what we need to have is more definitive timelines where development proposals, when they're made, the developer understands and the community understands the time frame that should exist in order to complete that process. I had a developer from Dutchess County tell me, for instance, he will no longer invest in New York State. You know where he invests? He says it's easier to do business in California because they're much more predictable in terms of their local review process. So this is critical. One of the things I talked to Steve Lutz recently from the feed company here in Oneonta. He told me about his experience with buying an $80,000 corn dryer. And the fact that NYSEG couldn't connect them because they only had interruptible gas service. So we need to provide more affordable, assured sources of natural gas, more renewable energy technologies, so that businesses can operate. And the other thing, the other big issue that has to be addressed is broadband. There are a lot of rural areas that simply don't have adequate access to broadband. And so this is something that is going to be critical to the economic viability of our communities going forward.
Mr. Heaney.
Yeah, so, as a small business owner, I feel like I have a unique perspective on the